Hi, Keith Hornblower here, doing a watercolour demonstration for Cookham Art Club. I hope you enjoy it. This is the finished result. It's an Icelandic landscape. Plenty of drama, I hope, and I'll show you how I did it. Now, during the filming, a little friend of mine made an unscheduled appearance, and it all happened out of shot, so I thought I should show you what all the rumpus was about. It was this little fellow here. He's with me virtually all day, every day. He keeps me company. It's the only company I have while I'm in here, so yeah, love the little fella, but he has his moments, and he did interrupt the filming, so I apologise for that. Anyway, hope you enjoy the demo. It's all filmed in real time, including all the mistakes, and I do make a few during the process. The paper isn't great. I whinge about it quite a lot as I go through. I'm sorry about that, but I normally use Arsh or maybe Two Rivers, Saunders Waterford, one of the good papers. This one's slightly cheaper stuff, and it's a bit soft. It roughs up when you try to lift paint off. So, but it did help with the textures and the mountain here. So the thing is to adapt to the materials you've got. That's a good point. Okay, hope you enjoy the demo, and I'll speak to you later. Thanks. Bye now. Whatever. I'll be painting an Icelandic landscape. It's not always snowy in Iceland. It's actually surprisingly green in the summer, but always volcanic and very dramatic. The picture I'm using here is just one I found on the internet. The houses here, you always get these amazing little houses just scattered around in the middle of nowhere. As I say, very dramatic. These are sitting a little low in the picture, so I'll probably move those up a bit, play around with the composition to suit me. I don't want to be too literal about this. So, before we go any further, I'll just move the camera and I'll show you my materials. Okay, so first of all, the paper. It's actually just cheap paper, and there is another painting on the back of it, so don't be afraid to reuse paper. It's a semi-rough kind of knot texture, £140. All I've done is tape it on the board. It's not stretched or anything. Okay, so down here I've got a selection of brushes. I won't be using all these, but I like to be prepared, so it's a selection. I'll probably just use 2 or 3. A few extra colours, bit of white, bit of black, and some neutral tint there, just in case. Right, my paints, I like to use tube colour. I think that's really important, to be able to get depth of tone, okay? I like strong tones, strong contrasts. And it's very hard to achieve if you're only using pan colour. So, a selection of colours, I'll talk about those more later. A few bits and pieces here, a spray bottle, razor blade, credit card for scratching out textures, and a knife for doing a similar thing, tissues. That's about it. Okay, let's paint. Right, I'll remount the camera and try and zoom in a bit more on the paper so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, let's go. I'll start with some very basic drawing. We'll start with the skyline here. Proportions of my paper are slightly different to the proportions of the photo. very slightly, so I don't mind if I squeeze things here or there or exaggerate. And the hill coming down here. I try to keep the drawing to a minimum. I like to do most of the work with a brush. Okay, let's move this house, let's move it up here somewhere. So I'm holding the pencil very loosely so I don't get too bogged down in the detail. Something like that. We get a bit more of a sweep down here. There is also a road which swings around this way, so that's rather nice. Helps to lead the eye into the picture. Another tree in the foreground here. That's useful. Another one here. And I'll move these buildings just up a little. Gable end here. I'll just approximate the shapes a little. I'm not going to get too tied into detail here. It's just a hint. A long building back here and further away. Another little one just sitting a bit higher. Okay. The drawing really is just to place things on the paper. I don't really like the idea of doing a very accurate drawing and then colouring in. Let's just pull that across a bit more there. Maybe take that up a bit higher. Something like that. Okay, first wash. The water pot over here. So I'm working from light to dark. It's the usual way with watercolour. You don't have to work from light to dark, but it's kind of logical. And I'm going to start with a warm wash. Where the light's hitting here, it's quite a warm colour. So basically yellow ochre. I might just green that very slightly with a touch of cobalt. Cobalt blue, because it's got red in it, it gives a much softer green. So it really is a very pale wash here. And it can get a little stronger as we come down. Not too strong though. Still very, very pale. Now I'm being I was going to say I'm being careful not to paint over the buildings, but that run's just gone straight through them. I'm not going to worry about it. It's all part of the fun. So those white buildings, you have to be really careful to paint around them. You have to remember that as soon as you paint anything with any colour, you're taking light away, okay? So the paper is the light. So whatever colour you paint on it, you're taking light away. The only way you can bring the light back is to use white, which I do occasionally. I'm quite happy to use white if I've lost a highlight somewhere. That's okay. It's all watercolour. So my yellow ochre is getting a bit stronger now as I come forward. A little bit of broken colour there. Even stronger here. Across the road. Sorry, my fan heater's just cut in. I don't know if you can hear that. I hope that's not too distracting for you. It does get very cold in here. Putting some more pure colour straight on the wet paper. Touch of sorry, burnt sienna. Just a touch there. I always have a tissue handy, just a dry brush, so I can lift off excess paint. Just a little more over here, I think. So these houses are already starting to pop because I'm not painting them, okay? Just join that through there. Okay. Lift off some of the excess here. Sometimes I like to add a little texture. I do things like this. I dip my fingers in my water jar and just flick. Just to add a little sparkle here and there. But now this needs to dry, okay? So I'm going to cut away now, get the hairdryer, dry this off, and I'll come back to you. Okay, see you in a sec. Okay, that's dry now, bone dry. Dried it with a hairdryer. Time to build up some layers. Now in the mountains here we've got an awful lot of texture going on. It's really craggy, sharp contrasts. So I want to capture some of that. Now I can do it the hard way by painting it very carefully with a very fine brush, taking hours and hours, painting every little crag and promontory or whatever. But my approach is a bit more spontaneous. So I like to throw on the paint and then move it around. So I'm using a colour here which is made by Holbein. It's called lavender. It's a lovely opaque colour which I'm going to use in here, mixed with some of my other colours. Bit of burnt sienna. Bring that up a bit more. Some lovely silvery, glowing light colours here. Right, now let's get that darker. Let's give it some oomph. I'm using blue. I'm making this probably a little bluer than it is in reality, because blue pushes back, gives a better feeling of distance. So keeping it slightly bluish in the background. Now I don't want to lose this beautiful light through here. That's almost the subject of the painting. So let's lift off some of this and let's see if I can move it around a bit. Let's use a credit card just to scratch in some textures and do some lifting. It's all about texture. Now when you scratch watercolour paper, when it's wet, the paint soaks back into it and you get these darker streaks. Now that's quite deliberate in this case. So already I've got some nice rocky texture going on there. There we go. Let's get a bit more warmth in here. Soften some of these edges. Now I'm going to leave that for now. I'll come back to the foreground because we've actually got some streaks of light going through here. So I'm going to use the bright yellow. This is Aureolin, I think, mixed with some turquoise blue to make a really, really bright green. I want that streaking through here. So this house is sitting on it. And that will carry on up the slope from there. And then maybe a few little touches over here. pure yellow there. Just soften some of these streaks. I've got quite a dark, this is a cloud shadow here, I think, making that dark. So I'm going to make a darker mix with burnt sienna, cobalt blue. That goes through here. I don't want to lose all these lights, so I've got to be really careful when I paint over here. Painting vertically, everything tends to run down, so anything I've got towards the bottom of the picture, I've got to be careful that colour doesn't run into it. So I should probably be reaching for the hairdryer again at this point, but I won't. I'll try and do it quickly. Some more darks over here. Another little bit of shadow up there, which is quite nice. So painting back into this drying wash here. Smudging and blending with the finger. You can see the way the paint soaks in where I've scratched the paper, where I've distressed it. Gives it more texture. Now using very thick paint, very little water on the brush, I'm going to mix up. Got some big puddles going on here. I don't like big puddles in my palette. Remember, the palette's for mixing paint. You can carry the water on your brush, put it on the paper, but this is for mixing pigment, so don't let the palette get too wet. So I'm mixing a dark mix, burnt sienna and cobalt blue. And I'm going to paint this lovely dark ridge over here. And then just using a damp brush just to drag that paint down and fade it. Another little technique, just using a damp tissue to lift paint off. Actually, this is not terribly good paper, it's very soft. The paper roughs up very easily, I'm finding now. paint back into that later. Just painting into that with some more blue. Again, a very stiff dark mix here. Nice dark passage in here as well. Look at that, lovely. Need a sharp edge here for contrast, and then this little ravine here kind of snakes along. And that just fades out there. Like that. Just dry some of the excess off and scratch in some dry brush marks. Something like that. Use a slightly smaller brush now, perhaps. I haven't got one out, so I'll carry on with this one. Let's carry on with this very, very dark mix. Cobalt blue, burnt sienna, that's all. There's a lovely little rocky outcrop here. So just painting with a fingernail there, dragging it around. Smudging it with a finger, anything to get some texture in there. And now I'm just going to scrape out the highlights. Random marks, all adding to the texture. a little more dark along the ridge here. Just to give that punchy contrast, you know, it's a lovely skyline. Maybe even just use a little spatter there, just a little. Don't know if you can see that. There's just a little bit of sparkle on there. Let's just scratch out a little more down that way, I think. A little touch of pure colour there. And let's go back to my green. Yellow ochre and cobalt blue, just for this soft green here. Just lift out a little light there, I think. There we go. I'm going to bring that dark down a little lower against the house, just to give it a bit more contrast. It's actually quite a dense belt of trees here. That's what this is. So I'm just going to give it a bit more texture. Dot in a little burnt sienna here, a bit of blue. Again, watch these runs. Get another tissue. Okay. Just a little more green up there. Just a little touch of bright green. There's quite a lot of light up here, so I don't want that getting too dark. Just needs that little splash of colour, I think. So building up these darks. A bit more punch. Just looking a bit of a solid block there. I've got to break that up a bit more, I think. This is quite a handy brush. This is quite a stiff artificial bristle brush, sort of thing you'd use for acrylic or gouache. It's quite good for lifting out. Paper roughs up fairly horrendously. It doesn't actually take the abuse I like to give it. Never mind. All the little bubbles of paper that are lifting off, they're actually adding texture, so that's all to the good. Just got to try not to rub through to the backing board. Then I know I'm in trouble. This is also quite a good blending brush if you want to soften some hard edges. It's quite a nice way to do it. So again, this highlight carries on down here. I'll probably do some scratching out with a razor blade when this is dry, but it needs to be bone dry before you use a razor blade. Needs a little more warmth in here, I think. It's catching the sun. Then I'm going to go quite strong and bold and dramatic. For that distant hill, I want to really make that strong. Some dark up here. Okay, getting a bit of drama going on now. I think we're getting there. So this is really, really thick paint. This is virtually straight from the tube. Again, just my mix of cobalt blue and burnt sienna. Just to give those really punchy darks. Right, let's have a look at the foreground now while all that's still soggy. Can afford to use a little more colour here. So this is yellow ochre. Aureolin yellow. and some burnt sienna. So the warm colours come forward, cool colours recede. Use a little touch of green in here as well. Don't often use green, I normally mix my own. That's a bit of turquoise there, just to cool it down for contrast. I'm going to use one of my favourite brushes, this one. It's an extended point. It's like a rigger with a fat belly. It means it holds lots of pigment and you can do longer lines. So I'm just going to use that. Just to put that line in there. That's a little strong there, I think. I'm just going to break this up a bit. Sometimes I like to dribble water through a wash that isn't dry. Just for the fun of it, really. I like to see what happens. Again, making sure I keep my whites there. Just breaking up these hard lines. I want a sharp edge there, but not along the top. So I'll just soften that top edge. But I want quite a good definition to the roadway there. And again, I'll just break it up a bit there, I think. That's enough. Going to lift out some highlight here. So I'm actually encouraging a cauliflower here. When you put water into a drying wash, the water spreads and it pushes the pigment out, and you get these little fuzzy cauliflower edges. For a painting like this, it can be useful. Again, it's all texture. Now I'm going to get the road in here, so that's a contrasting cool grey. So using mainly cobalt blue and greying it slightly with whatever's on the palette. Just darken it slightly, a bit more contrast. Lose it a bit down here, soften that edge. Okay. So I'm not being too literal with the colours here. I'm looking more at what I think the painting needs rather than copying the photo. Now I haven't touched the sky as yet. It's quite bright up there, obviously being the sky. But I know in Iceland you do get some very, very dramatic skies. So I'm going to exaggerate that a bit, and I'm going to make it darker. So I'm going to keep the lightest part of the sky here. I like that. Gives the drama of that contrast there, which I like. And then maybe just lose it a bit there. Soften the edge. Away. But up here I'm going to be quite bold. Some very, very heavy clouds going on here. So this peak is going from a positive shape there to a negative shape there. And I like those kind of transitions. Kind of fun. Still need a little more warmth along here, I think. It's looking a bit cool. So a slightly greenish yellow ochre. But I've got to keep it light. There's a lot of light coming through here. Just putting a touch of alizarin in here, so a kind of reddy tinge to it. little touch. Really needs to dry now. It's all getting quite wet. If you keep working and working on wet paper, it just spreads and you lose the whole thing. So I'm going to get a hairdryer again, dry that off, and I'll be right back. Right, so I've dried it off again, and having taken stock, I can see there's a lot more warmth going on up there, so I think we need a kind of unifying wash over this, just to give it some warmth. But I don't want to lose the light, so I have to be very careful. But I do want to warm some of this up. It's a nice little touch of pure burnt sienna there. I'll put some in here as well. This dark area needs to extend a little. Burnt sienna, touch of yellow ochre, just to warm this up here and there. That's better. Quite a shadow coming down here. This area of trees here is quite green, so some muted greens over here. So I'll have a little flash of sienna going through there. Nice. Maybe I'll just pick up some of this yellow here as well. Again, I don't want to lose the light, but it should be quite colourful down there, I think. Turquoise, aureolin, some lovely bright green here. go in a little with my nail. It's a kind of strange line here. It is there, but it looks kind of odd. An unfortunate little run there. I'm just going to lift that one out. And just carry a little highlight through there. It's better. Okay. A bit of colour back in there, just softens that edge. It's looking too hard. Going to get some light through there, I think. That's it. That's what I wanted. And then just a little dark behind the house there. See if I can get some sprinkles, get some sparkle going on in here. Might be too dry. We'll see what that does. If it is too dry, you can lift it off with a tissue, bring those little sparkles in. So sprinkle it first and then lift with a tissue. Just gives that little bit of texture. Right, now I need to look at these houses. First of all, there's a bit of shadow in there. Shadow on the gable end. I normally put a bit of shadow under the eaves as well. Though the eaves in Iceland are actually quite minimal, you don't get much of a shadow line there, but it just looks better. Get some windows. Get rid of that run. nice bright blue. I'm mixing turquoise and cobalt blue, but not too heavy. Okay. Same over here. Let's do the roof first. Which are actually quite low buildings. I'm just going to lower them a bit. And this one's actually got a more green roof, so I'll just put some yellow into that. Another one over here. There's one house with a red roof, which is this one. So one little touch of red. I'm going to break off now. My dog is scratching at the door. So if I don't let him in, he's going to break the door down. I'll be right back. Come on, monster. This is Jasper, just so you know. He's normally with me all day, but he can also be a bit of a pain, so I've cut him out today. I've left him outside, but he wants to come in. Okay, let's press on. You'll be good. Thank you. So using a small brush now, I just need a few little details. So I'm mixing cobalt blue, burnt sienna, yellow ochre. Quite a strong mix. So I'm using this to define the little house in the background there. nice little shadow line along the edge of the road here. Okay. Dots and daubs. Also got a tree in the foreground here. Now I'm going to use a different blue this time, ultramarine blue, stronger blue, with some burnt sienna, and some green as well. We've got these fir trees in the foreground, so just pushing the brush, giving some broken texture. And a couple of little fir trees here. Then I can use my pointy brush, my extended point, to put in the trunks and any branches I want. That's a bit strong, sorry. Just going to darken this foreground. In here. I like a bit of dark around the edges, it helps to lead the eye into the picture. Maybe a little more punch in one or two of these windows. Nah. Need my shadow mix for these buildings. Not copying them exactly, just painting something that looks as if it might work. Okay. Getting there, slowly but surely. Just a few more little dots and dabs, I think. Just to tie things together. I'll get some more darks going on up here as well. Some more little, just little touches. Some lovely little craggy bits coming down here. I can paint those in fairly carefully. Little accents of dark, which all helps to bring out the light. That's the thing. The light doesn't mean anything without these darks. They have to be there. They help a lot. Trying to add some definition to this house. The roof got a bit high, I think. So I'll just bring that down a bit. A few little calligraphic lines, if you like. It just helps to define the lie of the land. I'm just going to make these roofs a bit punchier, I think. few windows in here, and I think we're just about there. Okay, just a razor blade. It's a nice lamp post over there. See if I can just scratch that out. No, doesn't want to scratch. That's just a mess. Sorry. Because the paper's so soft. It's not a good paper. I know it's a poor workman who blames his tools, but it does pay to have good paper. I don't actually know what this stuff is. I think it's one I picked up in Moscow of all places. There we are. It's a bit chunky. But that's more the way it should be. Let's bring this one in the foreground. Let's put it there. Let's be brave. Make a statement. A little one back there. Probably hasn't helped the picture at all. I could use my little blendy brush to get rid of that if I wanted to, but I'm not going to worry about it for now. Let's just pick out just one or two more highlights. I think we could do with some light just in there. Picking out the road a little better. There we go. Yeah, this is really not nice, is it? You can cover up mistakes fairly effectively. All you need is a little bristle brush. I can lose all that white very easily. White's good because it lifts. You can just wash it off more than any of the other pigments. There we are. That's fine. make a bit more sense of this behind the houses here. Okay, I'll leave it there. I think that gives you the idea. I won't go on too long. I could let that dry, I could carry on refining it, but the paper needs to be better, I think. I'm not going to get too much further with this one. I'd like to put a little more light in here maybe. It really is catching the light in there, isn't it? So again, using a bristle brush, you can just lift it out. It's nice, it gives quite a soft glow when you use a lifting technique like this, rather than a hard-edged light, which you'd get with masking fluid. I never use masking fluid. I tried it, I just don't get on with it. There we are. Just put a little colour back in there. And there we have it. Iceland. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I didn't ramble on too long. But I hope that gives you some ideas and some inspiration. Be bold, be brave. Strong contrast, don't be afraid to put strong tones on there. It's the tonal values that make it work, if anything makes it work at all. It's the tones. Okay, thank you, see you next time, bye for now.